So I start my FEEP sessions when I meet with my groups by saying FEEP is an opportunity for you to build references. So when you meet your cooperating teacher, don't think of it as another class that you have to check off the list. Instead, think of it as you building your first reference for your resume. So I'm going to show you today how that ties in. We're going to talk just a little bit about the hiring process in Central Ohio. Pretty familiar with it. I've worked in 4 districts in Central Ohio. 2 of those districts in the Human Resources Department, 11 years in Human Resources. So I will answer your questions. In fact, I prefer to answer your questions. Since I think I'm one of the last presenters today, I won't even let you go until you ask questions. So realize that I'm not here to give you a presentation. Instead, I'm here to answer your questions. I remember very vividly 20+ years ago, sitting in a seat similar to you, and the superintendent of Westerville came in to present to our class, and I had all kinds of questions, but I was too nervous to ask. This is the opportunity for you to ask. There is no poor question. I'm sure there are several of you who are thinking the same thing. So I will actually prod you on some of that. Let's go through the selection process. Tonight at Worthington Schools, in my office, I have 160 candidates come in for a job fair. We are beginning our hiring process early this year because of a large number of retirements. That's partially due to the change in the retirement system, which you've probably heard a little bit about, and Worthington grew very rapidly 30 years ago. And when you grow rapidly, you hire a lot of teachers. When you hit 30 years, a lot of teachers retire. So those 2 things are colliding in Worthington, and I already have 31 resignations. So if I don't start our interviewing process now, I'm going to be behind. So if you know any seniors here who are doing their student teaching, they're in pretty good shape to get a position. Let's talk about that. I realize that light blue is a little difficult to see. Here's how it works. I'm going to post jobs. Next week, I'm taking 31 resignations to the Board of Education. They're going to approve those resignations. I will post them, and you will have the opportunity to apply. So I need to get to know my audience here. How many of you will be looking for a teaching job in, say, 2017? Okay, most? 18? 16? Good. Anyone this year? A couple people back there. Okay, so that helps me a lot. So about this time of year, you should be working on your applications. I will go through the application process, online surveys, structured interview, which is the big one that makes a lot of people nervous, building interview, performance interview, reference checks, and then ultimately a job offer. So let's start with the application. What does it entail? You're going to have a couple different options here. The first is the ODE application. You fill out one application, click the button, and it goes to every district in Ohio. It's pretty easy. It's improved quite a bit since many of us applied for jobs. That is one that I would recommend, especially if you have a broad search and you're willing to relocate. Second is the Ohio REAP, very popular on east of Columbus. I don't use that one anymore. In fact, many of the Central Ohio HR directors quit using it several years ago, but it is a regional application, and it's mostly east of Columbus. The next is AppliTrack. This is a company that provides a service to districts like Worthington, and we actually customize our own application so that we can ask you the questions we're interested in. However, because they also provide the same service to Dublin, when you fill out an application in Worthington and you complete it, if you wanted to apply to Dublin, you log in, and any question that's the same automatically populates. So it's already done. So it's very likely that you only have to answer 4 or 5 questions to apply to Dublin, and you're already done because we both use AppliTrack. Many, many districts in Central Ohio are moving to AppliTrack. If I was to only apply one way, I would probably pick your top 10 districts, and I guarantee you 8 to 10 are probably using AppliTrack. You could probably complete those applications pretty quickly. And the last is the individual district. Last I checked, Olentangy had a company that they had used. It was just for Olentangy. I don't know if they've changed that, but those are your options as far as applications go. Typical, they're going to ask you if you've ever been arrested. You're going to have to explain that if you have been. So there is a legal component that sometimes eliminates candidates from our search process. They're going to ask you some short answer questions. They're certainly going to ask you about your academic performance here, similar to what you heard about getting into grad school, some test scores. So they're going to want to see your praxis scores, that type of thing. And then there's going to be some extended response. What are your 3 most important reasons for wanting to be a teacher? You will have the opportunity to share short response, written. Many of those questions are the same throughout Central Ohio for multiple districts. Applications shouldn't be too difficult. It's electronic. You can start it. So some of you could actually start your application now for 2 years down the road. And you could just work on it. I don't see it until you hit submit. So this is the time of year prior to you graduating that you want to be working on applications. Let's see if I can go back. Next is online surveys. As soon as you click submit, in Worthington, 2 different companies are going to send you an email, and they're going to ask you to complete a survey. 2 different companies that we've partnered with to give us more information about you. The problem is we have so many applicants, we can't sort them. So it used to be, we used to take home stacks of applications every night. So I worked in human resources in southwestern city schools. A friend of mine and I would each take home about 15 applications every night. And we would sit on the couch or in the patio and we would read through your applications and we would score them. And then we'd come back the next day and we'd put them into piles and we'd take 15 more. And that's how we would sort those out. Very, very time consuming. And in Worthington, when I post a 3rd grade job and have 200 applicants in 2 hours and 2,000 applicants in 2 days, I can't carry those home and it doesn't make sense for me to print them. So what we do is we partner with these companies to have you do surveys so that I can tell how you view working with students and some of your preferences. They kind of give you a rating or a profile. Multiple choice, no right or wrong answers. The best way, and I just spoke to the seniors this year on how to prepare for these. The best way to prepare is to think about why you became a teacher and answer from in here. You cannot prepare by studying or Googling how to find the answers to these. I mean, it's best just to answer from your heart and go with that, and you will do very well on that. But with that, they are timed. So when I applied, and Dr. Conrath, who was just in here, actually hired me to work in Worthington. And when I applied to Worthington, I had to complete one of these surveys. Makes you a little nervous. There's this clock up in the right-hand corner that's counting down. You have like 20 seconds to answer the question, multiple choice. And when it gets to 5, the numbers turn red and they start blinking. And it makes you really nervous because at this point you've already eliminated 2 of the responses, but you're stuck between 2. You start to get sweaty. You don't know what you're going to do. And then finally you just guess between the 2, and then the next question pops up. It's really, really important that you answer these questions by yourself, away from everyone, no distractions. I tell this story to every group that I meet with. Summer in southwestern city schools around August, I interviewed a pre-K to 3 candidate. Brought him in for an interview. Halfway through the interview, I was so impressed. I mean, it was exactly what we were looking for. And I asked the candidate, how many interviews have you had this year? And she said, none. So I pulled up those screener scores, those surveys, and she had the lowest score that I'd ever seen. And I said, tell me about this. How did you get such a low score? Your answers are just fantastic. Well, she had just had a baby, and the baby started crying when she was answering the quiz questions. She left, came back to the test. It had timed her out, and those scores are on record for 2 years to every district in the country that uses that service. So this poor teacher didn't get any interviews because that was the lowest score on record. So if I was looking through pre-K to 3 candidates and I started sorting by how you scored on these online surveys, that would be at the bottom. So is it fair? I could talk all day on that. It's just a way for us to sort candidates. And it's been the last 5 years have been pretty competitive job market. We have a lot more applicants than we do jobs, and this was a way for us to sort. So that's a little bit about online surveys. Structured interview, the next step tonight, what's going to happen at Worthington, we're bringing in 160 candidates into our building, and we're going to go through about 11 to 12 structured questions. They're the same questions for all of the candidates. No right or wrong answer. Some of them are situational. Some of them are like very open-ended response. But we are trying to get to how you view working with students, how you view working with others. We're trying to get to your core principles here. Many people try to answer with the right answer, and it throws them all off. The other thing that you have to be prepared for before you go into one of these interviews is you're not going to get a lot of feedback. If you've ever interviewed at Starbucks or McDonald's and you go in and you have this really good conversation and you walk out and you're like, yes, I nailed it. That was perfect. The reason you felt that way is because you had feedback. When you take a structured interview in the educational setting, you do not get feedback. In fact, people are trained to give you zero feedback. You may answer the best, oops, not sure what I did. You may answer the best with the best response, and you're going to get nothing. So you have to be prepared for that. I will ask you a question, you'll answer it, I will go right to the next question. It's not like, oh, I really liked your response, or it's just rapid fire, 11 questions. When we do the full interview, it's 22 questions. At the end of it, I'm going to score you. Is there a trick to, there we go. Next, building interview. So once you've gone through this cycle, you've applied, you've done the online surveys, you've had a structured interview at a job fair like 160 people are tonight, we're going to take our top candidates and send them out to a building interview. This is usually where you connect with people. So some of you in this room are going to be really good at the structured interview because you can speak very clearly on what you believe and the reasons you went into education. And some of you are going to be very good at the building interview because you're a salesperson. You can sell anything and you will connect with anyone. And you will read the room and you'll connect with the teachers in there, and the assistant principal will love you before the interview is over. And that's okay. That's why we have two different systems. The next step is the building interview. You're going to meet with probably a couple teachers who are on your team. What are they most interested in? They just want to know that you're going to be a good teaching partner. Your principal wants to know how you're going to work on the team, what you're going to contribute to the overall staff. Very different setting. Those interviews typically take place in the spring. Next is a performance interview. These are growing in popularity in Central Ohio. What this means is we may bring you in to teach. 10-minute lesson. We'll call you the night before with the topic and say, we want you to teach on adding fractions. And you're going to teach to 5 students. And we'll have 5 students in the room. You'll come in, do a 10-minute lesson. They'll shake your hand. You'll leave. Next candidate comes in and teaches. That's usually what we do when we get down to 2 candidates and we can't decide. We have them come in and do a performance interview. Doesn't happen a lot. Probably won't happen a lot this year because it's such a competitive job market. We have so many positions. But by the time we get to 2017, it's very likely that you'll have to do something like this if you're a finalist. Last is reference check. So here we go, circle all the way back to FEEP. Now I'm calling your cooperating teacher from Hilliard and saying, hey, can you tell me about, what do you remember? What I love to hear is they were the absolute best FEEP student I ever had. And I've been doing this for 15 years. When I hear that, I know that we're on the right track. When I hear, well, other than their attendance and the fact that they really didn't do anything, they sat in the back of the room, they were okay, then I know we may not be on the right track. I am going to call people who watched you work with children. So even though you worked at the country club all summer and had a great summer job for 4 years, I'm not calling there. I'm calling teachers who watched you teach, professionals within the university that watched you work with students. I want to know how you are with kids. So reference check is a huge one, and then ultimately comes the job offer. So I presented this graphic to our Board of Education. I wanted them to know that when we interview candidates, it's not just a gut feeling, like, oh, I really like that person. We'll offer them a second grade teaching position. We have many different data points. So by the time it's over, if you count those different sections on that pyramid, you can see those online screeners. That's the first one. Then the teacher fit survey, your GPA or praxis, application, I can read through that. Scores from your structured interview, your observation or performance interview, your building interview, and ultimately your references. I have so many data points on you that it's easier to make a prediction on whether or not you're going to be successful in Worthington schools. That's how the hiring process works. Some common mistakes on applications. They fill out the entire application and they don't hit submit. That's a problem. We need to have access to it. There'll be an incomplete entry. So if you leave GPA blank, guess what I'm thinking? Probably something that you're not too proud of. Applying for outside the license. We always have a few people who do this. Every job I post, they apply. They don't have the license for most of them, but they apply anyway. If my secretaries see your name show up 75 times in a spring, it really is hurting your chances that you're going to be brought in. It's like you're not paying attention, you're not reading the posting, you're just hitting apply, apply, apply. Failing to update can oftentimes be a mistake. Sometimes when I search candidates, I will actually go on there. So if I have 1,000 applicants and I want to interview some people, I may go in and search, show me people who are looking for a social studies position that have actually updated their application in the last 30 days. Now, why would I do that? What am I trying to avoid? Yeah, or people who already have jobs. I don't want to call you up and say, oh, I've been working in Olentangy for 3 years. Thanks for calling, though. I want to know that they're actively searching for a job. So if you update your application, add a letter of recommendation, change your resume, what you're doing is you're taking your application and you're moving it closer to the top. So it may increase the chances that you're contacted. And failure to add additional documents. I love to be able to print resumes. It's 1 page. So when I go to my staff, I say, hey, we need a 3rd grade teacher at Granby Elementary. Print me 20 resumes. I don't print 20 applications because they're about 12 pages long. I want to see resumes, and I start going through them. Tell me about these 3 candidates. So those are common mistakes. References, are they really important? Absolutely, I already covered that. Who will I call? Who makes the best reference? It's your cooperating teacher, your FEEP placement. And letters versus contact information. Letters of recommendation are great if they're going to be glowing. If they're going to be pretty average, I probably wouldn't even include them. I would just list the contact information. I'm going to want to talk to people. If people have already written a letter, I'm probably not going to call them unless it's one of those coded letters. I've written a lot of letters of recommendation. Sometimes it's not so much what you say, it's what you don't say. I would have some letters if you think they're really positive, but I would also list a laundry list of people. I mean, be that bold and confident that you can call any one of these 10 people and they will tell you that I work really well with kids. That certainly helps. So let's, from Worthington's standpoint, I throw this slide up there because I want you to know that we go throughout the state looking for teachers. These are the job fairs that we traditionally go to each year, and we usually take between 1 to the Ohio State Job Fair is the largest. Tonight I will have 18 recruiters or 18 principals interviewing with me tonight. But at Ohio State, that's where we bring the most. Some of the smaller job fairs, we usually take 1 or 2 representatives and try to sort through as many of the candidates as possible. So this just gives you an idea of the job market. And this is Worthington history, so I wouldn't assume that every district is the same. But I want to point this out to you. So in 2009, 16 teachers retired, and we hired 36 people. What that means is the other 20 were people either resigning, relocating, taking a year off to take care of children, or maybe it was a new position. Maybe we created a new position, a new program that we were doing. But what this slide illustrates is the relationship between retirees and what's the likelihood I'm going to get a job. 2010 was an interesting year. We had some financial troubles. So 40 retired, but we only hired 21. We were actually reducing teachers because of the financial situation. But I'm going to skip all the way down here to the last couple years. 13, 52, We hired 87, 20 last year. We're predicting this number to be over 60 this year, and I'm predicting this number to be about 100. If Worthington Schools is hiring 100, Hilliard, I think, is hiring over 100. Southwestern hired 100 last year, so they'll be at about 150. This is going to be the most competitive job market ever in Ohio, probably in 40 or 50 years. So this is a great time. Now, it's easy to say that when I'm talking to the seniors, but some of you are a few years out. What does that mean for you? My prediction is it's going to return more to this 16, and we'll be hiring 36. So there'll still be jobs. It'll just be a little more competitive, and some of you may need to expand your search in the future or add some type of license, endorsement, that type of thing. So here are common questions. I told you I need questions from you. I've been doing all the talking. These are questions that I get a lot, but I want to hear from you. What are you thinking? What questions do you want to ask an HR director? And I don't know who you are, although I have to tell you, I've heard some great things about this group of FEEP students, not just the Worthington group, but the other groups as well. So I give you a lot of credit. We traditionally have wonderful groups, but I don't think I've heard a single negative story at this point. So that's fantastic. What questions do you have? Yes, thank you. Good question. Resumes for you should be one page. Don't try to stretch it out and put, I did my student teaching at, Harmon Elementary School and list 45 things that you did. I know what student teachers do. You don't have to list them all. Now, if you have some unique things like maybe you did an inclusion class, that's kind of unique. Hopefully most of you have some exposure to special education. But if you have some things like that, put a couple bullet points. Resumes are not read, they're scanned, so open space is okay. It's good because it draws the eye to the important things. But one page for a student teacher is fine. I try to keep my resume to one page, honestly. It's just highlighting. It doesn't mean that's all-encompassing. It's just trying to draw the eye to maybe some unique experiences that you have. Yes?
Do you prefer having a cover letter?
Not really. Cover letters, I typically read cover letters when people are relocating. We get a lot of teachers who go to South Carolina for their first job, or Texas or Florida. When they're coming back, I like to read the cover letter because it tells the story of why they're moving. Candidates right out of school, cover letters oftentimes get skipped over, which is the same with this portfolio. A lot of the universities really push those as a project. It's going to be so impressive when you sit down at that interview and have a binder this big. We don't have time to get through to that binder. So it's nice to keep all of your resources in one place, but it's not going to help you get a job. And I think most of my HR colleagues would agree. Yes?
What kind of binders or endorsements are attractive on an
Good question. The 4-5 endorsement has been big. It's going to open some doors. So a lot of pre-K to 3 candidates out there. It's a pretty crowded job market. But when you have the 4-5, it opens doors and gives us more flexibility. In Worthington, because we're K-6 elementary schools, we really like those candidates. So that helps. Probably the hottest one, though, is the ESL or TSAW endorsement. First of all, it's a wonderful opportunity to work with kids who come from diverse backgrounds and are super motivated to succeed in our country. And that, to me, is exciting. But besides that, I think it's 7 classes. It was 7 classes here at the university. And the last time I posted a position, I had 20 applicants. And that was in the spring. By the time I got to the summer and was posting, I was pulling up 3 or 4 applicants. So if you want a job, that is what I would encourage you to pick up if you have time to get an additional endorsement. I just think it's a fantastic job, and it's very rewarding, and it's in high demand right now. But that would be my advice. Some of these others, reading endorsement, you'll hear arguments both ways. The bottom line is I would believe that all of you just want jobs because you're tired of paying for classes. And when you come work for us, we have ways of those classes being cheaper. Our partnership with the university, having you in our schools, gives us vouchers so that our teachers can take classes for free. So it would be nice to be on the other end and take classes for free rather than to have to pay for them. So I say that, and I appreciate the grad school people being here because that's a great opportunity. And in education, we assume you're all going to get your master's degree at some point. but it does help out paying for it if you're employed by a district. Yes?
Do you shy away from new teachers with masters?
Great question. I think that's up there. No, I've never met an HR director that says, ooh, we have 2 candidates, they're really close. I think I'm going to go with the one that's $1,000 cheaper. Because we assume you're all going to get your master's degree, so at some point, the salary's going to be the same. So you break the tie with who you think's better, better fit for that job. So I would not discourage anyone from getting their master's degree thinking they're not going to be employable. Yeah, you could be right. Smaller. His comment was maybe in a more rural setting where they're only hiring 3 teachers a year, that could throw their whole budget off if they have to pay you more. I find that to be more true with experience than with education, because it's a difference of about $1,000, $1,500 a year on our pay scale. But you could be right. Yes.
How do organizations like Teach for America impact the process?
Teach for America gets a lot of publicity. I've only hired 2 from the program, and it wasn't that we weren't looking. It's just that I don't find a lot of candidates from that program. I've had some candidates from some of the grant programs in the sciences where they take people in careers, science type careers, and they bring them over. I think the Woodrow Wilson Foundation is real active here, and they pay for students to become teachers. But Teach for America, I've had success. I just haven't had a lot of numbers in that program. Yes? That's an excellent question. In Worthington, we're a little bit ahead when it comes to that. Traditionally, it's very standard. You know, most districts will tell you they'll hire people from 0 to 5 years or 0 to 8 years. So whatever you have, you're locked in at that salary. I think our starting salary is somewhere around $42,000, which is pretty competitive in the area. That's with bachelor's degree, maybe slightly higher with bachelor's degree, and I'm quoting not this year's, but in the future here. I have flexibility now. During our negotiation process, I negotiated with our teachers union, or our district did, and we agreed on some things. What I was finding is I had all of these teachers who taught for 8 years, and they stayed home to raise a family, and now they want to come back to work, and most employers in Central Ohio are saying, you're too expensive. I can't bring you in. I'll have to pay you $60,000 when I can go to Ohio State and get a top-notch candidate for 41, 42. So what we negotiated in Worthington is that I can go down 3 years or up 3 years, depending on the job market. So if it's AP chemistry and I really need you, I might, even though you have 0 years experience, I might put you on step 3, which gives you more money. Or if it's pre-K to 3 and you've been home raising your family for 5 years, I can go down 3 years. So that gives me greater flexibility. The other thing that I'm very fortunate in Worthington, if I have a hard-to-fill position, I can give a one-time signing bonus. So 2 years ago, I hired 3 science, physical science teachers, and we gave them all $7,000, all 3 of them, $7,000 after they completed their first year successfully. So that is a tool that school districts have, some of them, to help work and be competitive in a job market. Yes?
I know that bilingual education is like kind of like what does that look like for jobs? Is it more open or is it
It's a good question. Foreign language as a whole has experienced a decline due to budgetary restraints in Central Ohio. I think what you're starting to see in districts like Worthington, where our finances are much better than they used to be, we're having those conversations. Wouldn't it be good to add Spanish back to the elementary school? And what would that look like? How many teachers would we have to add? Our board is very interested in having those conversations. So I do see that growing again, but it's so much hinges on financial stability. And that's another thing. When you look for a job, never underestimate financial stability. So I was fortunate enough to get a job right out of college. It wasn't until August, though. So I lived that summer. And then I was RIF'd in Gahanna. They failed their levy while I was a first-year teacher. The youngest teachers are the ones that typically lose their jobs. I lost my job and was searching for a job the following summer. That is one thing that I would consider when I'm looking for a job. Now, obviously, you can't be too picky because you need employment, but financial stability does matter. And in fact, of the 160 people I have coming in tonight, there's quite a few New Albany teachers. And many people would have never thought that New Albany would be laying off 55 teachers. But my email box is filling up full of New Albany teachers who are losing their jobs, and they know that we're looking at a record number. Before you accept the job, let's talk about that. All of the HR directors in Central Ohio get together every month. So don't go out and think that you're going to be able to play one district against another, because you will get burned. So occasionally we'll have someone come in, or they'll say, yeah, I'm really interested. Thanks for offering me a job, but I need to talk to my boyfriend and my parents. Can I have another week to decide? And you know, that's not very common. And what we find is the reason they're holding out is they graduated from a district and they have an interview there next week. If you have an interview next week, just say, I appreciate the offer. I have an interview next week. Will you give me a week to decide? It may be that the district will say no. I know many districts who will say, if that's where your heart is, go ahead. We're moving the other direction, and we're going to fill this with our second option. That's usually how it works. So I would expect that. You're not going to get a lot of time because it's competitive, and every week we wait, we lose top candidates. So you need to know that if they offer you this job, that you're going to accept or you're not going to accept, and go through that process. But please don't try to be tricky. And it's just, Central Ohio is a pretty big place, but because we all work closely together, we will know your name, and then we'll soon figure out. And it doesn't usually work out well for candidates. So I never realized that when I was applying for jobs, but I'll throw that out to you because we talk quite often. I've already talked to 2 HR directors in other districts just today. So we're always communicating. We've got a lot of questions over here. What about up front? Yes?
What other districts are as competitive as Burlington?
What do you mean by that?
Like, it sounds like there's a lot of applicants and like it's really crazy amount of.
You know, I think people traditionally are drawn towards suburban districts. I don't know if that's good or bad. My wife taught in Columbus Public, had fantastic experience until we had kids, and she decided to stay home for a while, and then she wanted to work and teach in the same district where our kids went, so that she didn't go back to Columbus. But Columbus, you know, sometimes gets a lot of bad publicity, but it's a very rewarding career. It's just different, and to be honest, the salary's not too far off. So I don't know. I can't really answer that question. I think it depends on what you're looking for and where districts are in the levy cycle. So when you're looking for a job, one of the most sought after school districts may be laying off, and now all of a sudden it's not so attractive. So that's, you know, in my mind, that's what makes Worthington a good pick right now, is that we have that stability. And that's really important when you're starting your career. The last thing you want to do is, you know, start to set up your adult life, and the next thing you know, you're relocating to another part of town or another part of the state. Any other questions? Yes? Good question. I have trouble filling science, foreign language, psychologists. Those are sometimes difficult to find. Intervention specialists can get tricky if it's late in the year. That's probably it. Sometimes there's some weird 4-9 combos. You know, like everyone goes math science or language arts social studies, but sometimes I'll get a principal who will call me and say they want language arts science. And there just aren't very many people who have that, so that becomes difficult. This year will be really, I mean, it's going to be really, really competitive. But that's probably, you know, and then TSAW. TSAW would be top on the list. Good. I don't know where I'm at. I left my phone in the car and I wasn't going to go back to get it in this temperature. 2 more questions. Good.
Yeah, I was wondering if we coordinate the hiring for the school counselors and what the job outlook looks like for that.
School counselors, yes, we have one retirement that will go to the board, and the job outlook for counselors really depends on what school districts are going to do with that service. There are some districts that want to expand it and have a counselor in every elementary school because more and more students need that intervention. There are other districts that can't afford it, and that's one of the first things they reduce. In Worthington, we have part-time counselors at the elementary school, so they travel between multiple buildings. So the resource is there, just not full-time. I would say we don't have a huge group of retirees because that tends to be consistent, but I'm thinking 1 or 2 this year and maybe another 1 next year. So it's a pretty average. That's one of those things too where the program used to require you to teach, and for a long time I think HR directors were very, very prone towards taking someone who had teaching experience because you have a different perspective, and that's totally changed now. I mean, it's a wide open competitive job market. So some of the people we've hired right out of the university have been stars and just really, really good at what they do. So, and last question. Yes. Yeah, I've not heard of a district that actually takes taxpayer money and pays for teachers' student loans, but there are a number of programs out there, federal programs, that if you work in a school of poverty, so there has to be enough students, I think they go by free and reduced lunch, what percentage of the students are on free or reduced lunch, and we have buildings within our district that qualify for that, and I have a number of teachers who send me that paperwork. I sign it verifying that that's where they work and that's what the statistics are, and they do receive some type of help on student loans. Not a large number because there's only specific loans that they'll pay off, but there are some programs out there, which is a great question. So last thing I'm going to say before I step down here is at this point, my job is about pulling in the best teachers into Worthington. But once I pull those teachers in, I spend a lot of my time dealing with teachers who aren't really happy in their jobs. So if you have questions in your mind about whether or not you can do this for 38 years, and I'm assuming that you're going to be about 22 when you start, I would really, really encourage you to search hard for the answer to that question. The last thing you want to do is get 3 years into this profession and realize that it's not for you. So really, really do some searching. And confirm that this is what you want to do. Once you've done that, I have to tell you the good news is I think you're in the right place. We have had fantastic luck with hiring students from this university. They've been extremely successful. They've taught our teachers, who I consider some great professionals, some wonderful things, typically about technology. We're a little behind when you get my age on things like that. And it's become a great partnership bringing in young energetic teachers. So once you've decided that that's the career for you, I just want to encourage you to keep going because you are in the right place, and your success at finding a job oftentimes depends where you come from. And I don't say that to every group, but I think you're in the right place, and I think the odds of you getting a job will be very, very good. 17, 18, it'll still look good even though it will be a little more competitive than it is now. So thank you.
Just a quick announcement. If you haven't already, make sure you get your cooperating teachers evaluations forms to them soon, because you'll need to get those turned in the last seminar meeting, which is the week after Thanksgiving. So there's no seminar next week. Happy Thanksgiving. But we all work hard to make sure that this is a successful experience for all of you. We hope you had a really good term. You should also know that FEEP is unique among universities in the area here. So your experience getting to do this career exploration is something a lot of other universities and colleges in the area don't get. So we really hope that this was a good experience, a good term, whether or not you choose to go into education. Hopefully it was a good decision-making opportunity for you. And I don't know if all of you are familiar, these are the GAs that you work with. So we have JP, who you see a lot, and Tim, and Luke, and Tara, and Dr. Casta, who is the former director of FEEP and who's staying on as a consultant for us now. So let's give him a round of applause just for being here for us. So everybody go out and have a good break, and we'll see you all the week after Thanksgiving.